Hello, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful interview with Dr. Mark Howard. I'm delighted today to be joined by Mark, who I met on my apprenticeship over a year ago, and I wanted to really bring Dr. Mark to you. He's been a gift to me, and I want to gift him to you today, knowing that, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, in the spirit of gratitude. There's something here for you today to really get a feel for and a sense for as you're going about your busy day or your working life or your relaxed day, depending on where you are in the world at the moment. Dr. Mark came into my life, as I said, over a year ago, and one of the things that really struck me about Mark was his simplicity in sharing his message and the understanding of the principles behind every human experience in life. And so I wanted to really give him the chance today to share with us a little bit more about that. So welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Grace. So good to see you, and really feel a privilege of being part of your gift to your audience, and hopefully it will provide some insights for people around a Thanksgiving feeling.
Yeah, well, I think it will, Mark. So we'll get right in, and I guess
Sure.
what comes to mind for me is this good feeling that you talk about, and this good feeling that we know as our true nature. So can you share a little bit with us? How do we have that Thanksgiving or grateful feeling all year round, as opposed to just at this time of year or Christmas time or whenever?
I think that's a beautiful point. That what I have realized is that feeling, people call love and understanding, or generosity or gratitude, really is the energy we are a part of. It's something we come into life with, and it never is lost. So it's always within us, in kind of a spiritual nature, if you want to call it that, in that we can't think our way and grab it. But it isn't something that just comes around when there are certain occasions in our lives, but is always there for us to find and live in, and then express with others in our lives and deepen our relationships with. So it's around all year long. You never lose it. And the only thing that gets in the way is our everyday thinking, our stresses and strains, and, our opinions and criticism and so forth. Those kinds of thinking we all do, being human, get in the way of it. And sometimes people feel like that feeling is lost to them. But really our true nature, that what we are beyond our own identity, is love and understanding. And it shows around this particular time, around particularly North America, where we celebrate a Thanksgiving, it shows itself in gratitude.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Certainly, let's talk for a moment about that, because I heard you say that, it's just our everyday thinking that takes us away from the good feeling. So, can you say a little bit more about, everyday thinking? It's something we're all doing. We're all involved with thought. So is there particular types of thinking that remove us from that feeling? And why does thought, have the capacity to move us away from the good feeling?
Well, I think, I'd love to. First, let's look at that question. It isn't the thought that you've been talking to your audience about that is all encompassing, that we are all a part of, and brings us our experience moment to moment, that it takes us away from anything. It's just that quite naturally we think. And growing up, in life, we take on the thinking that's around us, and all of that looks like things to use to think our way through life. So thought has just this capacity to allow us to create the experience we're having in our lives, whether it's being bothered or irritated or having fun and joy. But one of the things I've talked about recently that quickly can get us into thinking that takes us away from feeling good, particularly about ourselves, is the idea of making comparisons, you know? And I've seen that it's a really common thread in our humanity to think about ourselves in comparison to how other people are doing. And now with the life coaching clients I have, particularly younger people who are on Facebook a lot, that's one vehicle. I'm not critical of it, but it's one vehicle where it's so easy to compare yourself to a friend who's like traveling to Italy or taking a cruise, you know, to the Antarctic or whatever, you know, say, oh my goodness, why don't I have the money to do that? You know, so it's that kind of innocent, humanness way that we can easily drop into making these comparisons. I do it too, you know, within the world of the principles community. I'm considered one of the pioneers there, but still I can get tempted to compare myself to my colleagues in terms of what they're doing, you know. And so the minute you do some thinking like that, you're now in the feeling of that. That's what the principles of thought do. The minute you engage a thinking that is formed in your mind, you're in the feeling that falls out from that. And so the minute you're in a comparison kind of feeling, you're moving away from the peacefulness of love and understanding, or the gratitude to just be you, you know, the gratitude for the life you have found. So you could be living in that one moment, see what your friend's doing on Facebook, and all of a sudden be in envy, you know, or critical thinking about yourself because you made comparison thinking.
Yeah, I think we can all connect with that.
Yeah.
All of us can, you know, and there's something kind of refreshing, Dr. Mark, to know that, you know, you're a pioneer in this area. You know, you were one of I believe one of the first psychologists to bring the principles into that field. And yet, you know, there's something refreshing to know that even you get lost in comparison thoughts and something very human about that I think is refreshing. Tell us a bit about that journey for you, if you're open to it. You know, like, tell us a little bit about how you came across this understanding and ended up in that pioneering direction.
Yes, you know, I think you're right. I think what's refreshing is to realize we're human, and that we can't perfectly live an understanding we have come to 24/7. And seeing we're human allows us to relax about getting into thinking that we would like to not be in. But for me, I really started with wanting to feel happier, and also to take my clients deeper than I could with what my traditional training gave me as a way to help people. So this is way back in 1983. And I was easy to irritate, take offense at people, get angry with people, debate them. And I just wanted to stop that. And I was fortunate that I was directed, when I looked for that, I was directed that week to Sydney Banks, who was doing a seminar in my community. And so I went to that seminar, and I had, listening to him, I had a realization, an insight that really has carried me. And it's really beautiful to see we can learn this way, that we have the resources for learning that goes beyond the intellect, which I would call realization or insight. What I saw at that moment was that the feelings I was in were just made up, not that they were false. It was just that they were made up. They weren't something that were giving me the truth of life. And they were made up through this power of thought. Now, at that time, I didn't understand it. I just saw that to be true. And that took me on the journey of understanding these teachings, because I saw in that moment of insight, as I could understand this more and more, I'd be happier. And so would my clients. So actually, that was such a realization that it shifted my work immediately. Then the next day when I went back to see my clients, I really could not do the work I used to do. I was just talking with my clients about what I saw, and they loved it. And so I've been on this journey to understanding these principles more and more through the years, and finding more and more happiness with just understanding how thought can create our experience from moment to moment. And it's really changed my personal life to deepen my marriage. It probably saved the marriage and kept it going longer because, again, if you're somebody who always thinks you've got the right way, that other person in your life kind of, gets tired of that. So it's really moved me to a deeper, loving, understanding place with my wife and my son, friends, colleagues. And but that's where it started, and it's continued to move in the direction of deepening that understanding, and to the point where my psychology, my mental health colleagues have asked me to come and talk to them about it. So that's where, within the first year of my meeting Sydney Banks, I started to bring it into the field.
Beautiful, yeah. And wow, are we grateful for that? That's something to be very grateful for. I mean, I too have felt so much more at home in self in looking in this direction. And I know any conversation I've had with you has been so transformative, and just, I'm sure the audience can feel it, just leaves you in a state of good feeling and gratitude, just that sense of our true nature as you describe it, Mark. And one of the conversations that we had was very impactful for me. At the time, I was struggling with a lot of what you described as self-evaluation. And that was such a powerful, even just hearing that term was so powerful for me, because you and I spoke at a time when I was very caught up in a lot of thinking about how much food I was eating and how much alcohol I was drinking. And in the world of the eyes, they probably would have been saying, why is she worried about that? I mean, she doesn't overeat and she doesn't overdrink. But in my experience, there was a lot of scary thinking about food and alcohol and really habits. And you helped me to see the level of self-concern I was lost in, and how I didn't have to give so much attention to that. And the simplicity in our conversation actually led to a dramatic change in my experience around being myself, to the point that today I feel, I have a deep sense of enjoyment for life and a deep sense of enjoyment for dining out. I've embraced food more. Sometimes I've embraced alcohol a bit more too, but without the guilt and shame. And it was just in the space of a conversation, Mark. It was such a powerful coaching experience. I guess what's percolating here for me to ask you around that is, I'd love to say, what did you say to me at the time? Don't remember. But it's like, what do you say to people that are lost in that level of self-evaluation and concern about themselves? And particularly those that are stuck in perhaps evaluating their habits in that way. What do you see about that?
Well, just a beautiful feeling about you, Grace, as you were able to find more peace about who you are and just truly drop into yourself, being yourself.
Yeah.
Um, what that reminded me of, something that really meant a lot to me, really hit me hard, when Sydney Banks said, "Just be ordinary." And when I heard that, I just realized, just be a everyday, what we call over here in the States, an everyday Joe, and not really think so much about yourself. But where that deepened in terms of my conversation with you, Grace, is that the feeling we started our conversation with today is there for you as long as you're alive. Probably after that too, but I don't really know that, but it's there. Now, what takes you away from that? One of the big things that'll take you away from that is thinking how you're doing, thinking about yourself. And many of my clients start feeling bad because they habitually do that. And they've got like expectations are a way that you can feel bad about yourself. Not that it isn't maybe valuable to kind of look like you'd like to get somewhere as an expectation, but when you use them to evaluate yourself today, you're heading away from wisdom, love, and understanding. And so the self-esteem that we might call, what you found deeper, Grace, just to call it something, is what we are. We are that. We are. We really are. That is our true nature. And the minute we start thinking about how we're doing, we lose sight of that. A number of my clients also have this perfectionistic kind of idea, and hold themselves to a way of being that, really in the human condition, it's impossible to do that. So those kinds of ways of looking at yourself and measuring yourself, all you want to see is the minute you start to engage that, you're going to move away from the feelings that have within them, actually, in love and understanding, there's the ingredient we might call wisdom. You have the guidance already about where to go next in your life or how to be. But once you take over the direction of that, Mark Howard takes that over, I'm easily then into self-evaluation, which will make me feel bad. I mean, even if you feel good from self-evaluation, it's not the good of contentment, or of pure love or understanding. So
it's a different direction altogether.
It's a different direction altogether, yeah. So I love when Sid reminded me to just be ordinary. And isn't that powerful?
That is so powerful. I mean, the first
Yeah.
time I heard that was was kind of mind-blowing, because so many of us have, certainly those of my audience listening, we have been on a path of, you got to do more, be more, have more. There's no, you can't be ordinary. And for some people, even for some of my clients, it's kind of a bit of a shocker, because they somehow feel like if they're just going to be ordinary, they're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Very innocent. But that was my thinking too, before I became totally okay with the contentment in the moment. And the experience has actually been the opposite. It's been like being ordinary has been my saving grace, if you like. I felt like in the past I had to be someone, and I had something to prove, and I had somewhere to get. And so there was a lot of striving energy that you bring to that. And I know some of my audience can relate to that kind of pushing to get somewhere, but then getting there and kind of, waking up. I remember I was waking up, in 5-star hotels and having wonderful and big experiences, and kind of going, oh, is this it? So when I heard just be ordinary, my initial reaction, I thought, would be to be repelled at that. But I find myself curious about it and engaging it. And I see for myself now with clients too, there's something in that, just living your life, and
That's right.
just fuels us.
Yes, I think that's another way of saying it. Is just live life. And, the logic for me that allows me to live, to kind of drop into be ordinary, is that it comes from the fact that we are all part of mind, this spiritual energy, the creation of life, the intelligence behind life. And when we drop our own kind of thinking about ourselves, getting this sense of self-importance or sense of insecurity that can happen when we think about ourselves, we don't lose anything. We gain the guidance from that intelligence to assist us in life, and that doesn't that doesn't mean we don't accomplish or create in life. In fact, we do more because we have removed the obstacles of feeling bad about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So being ordinary just means for me that when I really feel the feeling of that, my mind relaxes about thinking about myself. And so then the wisdom comes up about what next to do in your life, whether to just give a friend a call or create a project. So many people have the false impression because they don't have a really deep sense of what they truly are a part of. And when you see that you're a part of this wisdom that's in life, the intelligence of life that's in all living things, and it's there for us, knowing that, I guess in a way makes it easier to just live your day, live life.
Yeah.
That's really a beautiful way of saying it, Grace.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's kind of, I don't know if this is the right term, but it's kind of ironic that because wisdom is anything but ordinary. Like it's usually the thing that moves us quicker than anything else. It's almost just like one touch of God's favor and you're miles ahead. It's anything but ordinary. So I love what you're sharing around this. And Mark, like what for you, we're going to talk for a moment about the missing link, because you have this beautiful study group coming up that I want my audience to hear more about. And I wanted to ask you before we just touch on that, what for you is the missing link? Like what's the thing that you would say is the missing link that people, if they could just get that, they would have that contentment and peace of mind?
Well, for me, what comes to mind about the missing link, and it's really, again, from my immersion in knowing Sid and being taught by him and attending his seminars and reading his books and so forth. So that's where this understanding comes from for me. But we're talking about that we are part of the spiritual energy, but the spiritual energy comes into form. We have our physical form. We have form of our own thinking. And so what helps me is to know that what bridges, what's the missing link between me as a Mark Howard and the spiritual nature of me is thought. Thought is this capacity and power to move from the spiritual energy into something. That's really what it's about. It's simply that. It is part of the spiritual energy that allows us to create. So we move from this formless energy into a form, which we would call our thinking, but it's greater than that, you see. So realizing that's the link. That's where you are able to manifest moment to moment the reality of your spiritual nature. I mean, if you didn't have thought, you'd just be kind of here, you wouldn't know life. You wouldn't see life, or, so it's a really beautiful gift. Again, something to be thankful for. But it allows us to bridge that kind of formless energy, spiritual is formless, right? Into something.
Yeah.
So knowing that allows me to really honor the principles. And really, really briefly, I was reading The Enlightened Gardener by Sydney Banks the other night, and the simplicity of this came to me when I read something there. It's a novel. It's a story about fictional 4 psychologists who meet this enlightened gardener on a conference in England. And one of them asks the gardener, what are feelings? What are emotions? And the gardener says, emotions are created through thought and brought to our awareness by consciousness. And to me, there you have the simplicity of the missing link. That our experience comes from the manifestation of our spiritual nature, but we're given thought and consciousness to have the full experience of what we've created. So we know a friend, we know love, we know joy, we know the whole gamut of being in this human condition. But knowing that's where it all starts is, for me, what I see as the missing link.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. And so, I carry the missing link, the actual missing link book with me, which is again by Sydney Banks. And I opened up today in preparation for our interview. I just randomly sometimes open the book, and what came out was just this beautiful quote from Sid: discard the restless, haunting ghosts of yesterday and set yourself free to live the beauty of today. And just every little piece in here just speaks to my soul. And something as simple as that, it just really spoke to me about, this missing link around how we use thought. This principle of thought is so huge. And so I'm really passionate that people listening here, if they're interested, they get to go a little bit deeper in this direction. And so tell us a little bit, Dr. Mark, about the missing link group, the study group that you're opening up for 2018, because I believe you will be using the book itself and the work of Sydney Banks. Tell us a bit more.
Well, Grace, thank you. So this will be the 3rd year. So 2 years ago when I started, you see, the missing link to me is a special book of the number of books Sydney Banks has written. That book does what you just said. It's written to speak to your soul. It's written to wake up, as I said, the insights and realizations of the wisdom you are. It's written at that level. You could call it, it's written spiritual, or it's written philosophical. And so there are 13 chapters that speak to some aspect of life. Like he will do writings about thought. He'll talk about forgiveness. But it's written at a special level that the other books, although there are spiritual teachings in the other book, this is dedicated to waking that up in you from cover to cover. And so I was giving a seminar, and it just dawned on me, if I could meet with people, like, I don't know if they have them in your country or your community. They have these book study groups where groups of people get together and they have a dinner and they read a novel or they read a nonfiction book and then everybody discusses it, you know. And I thought I would love that format for reading and bringing the missing link spiritual teachings to everybody, so that we had a way to gather and read a chapter together. That's what we do. We read a chapter together once a month. And so we come together once a month over the internet virtually, and we read a chapter, and everybody shares what's coming to them from their own insights about it or their own realizations about it. And so that's what came to me a couple of years ago. I thought this would be a great format to really take the journey to Sid's pointing to the spiritual level throughout that book, to wake up our own knowledge, our own spiritual knowledge, our own and like you, to speak to the soul, to touch that. And I'll tell you something, every meeting we've had has that feeling to it. It's just been remarkable how that feeling wakes up in us as we read each chapter, and as we go together through the year, it deepens. And how much people share what they've been able to find during the month after a reading. And my goodness, you know, it just touches everyone deeply. And we just, our meeting for November, we were so deeply in love and understanding and gratitude, really, as people shared all of the gains they've made through the year of understanding. So that's why I offer it. And it goes beyond just that little moment I had of, I think this would be a wonderful thing for people to, I mean, it's gone beyond any expectations I had about what it would be like in terms of what people can discover. And you know what? Again, it talks about how we're all connected to one another because we're all part of mind. That we've had people from the UK, we've had people from Sweden, of course, North America, from Asia that have joined us. And the minute we're together, we're in this deep connection. So it's just a great resource to even if you're not quite sure about the principles, if you want to just wake up, well-being and wisdom, what we've done with this book study group brings that about.
Yeah, and I think that's the gift, isn't it? I mean, that's what's really on offer here, you know, for anyone who's really wanting to wake up in 2018 and be in a good feeling more of the time and operating from that place, you know, I mean, that there's nothing better. And just you having this, making this available, Mark, is wonderful. So tell us, you know, when are you starting and sort of what's on offer for us?
So, again, it's a year-long program that starts January 18th is our first meeting. And we'll meet, I think that's the third Thursday of the month. And so each time we'll take a chapter. And so for people who... it's open now. It's open enrollment now. You can register now and sign up and all. And for people who do that before the end of January, get some, you know, kind of bonus gifts from me. There are two podcasts I did that I thought were very powerful explanations of the principles. So one is a podcast about how the principles understand depression. But it's not so much about depression. It talks a little bit about that, but it's really about feelings in general. And the other is a podcast about the principles in mental health and what really is mental health. So those aren't readily available, but those are part of what people get with registering. within December. But they also then get a free 45-minute coaching session with me on anything they'd like to get coached about. So those are kind of the gifts I'm giving for people who sign up early enough so that we know how full our group is getting. And I just, and again, my thank you for doing that, for being part of this program with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds wonderful. I mean, my coaching conversation with you way back then for 45 minutes has still been impacting me, as I said. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what a great bonus and a great offer. So we'll add the link below so that everyone can have a look and register. And certainly I encourage you to get on board if this is speaking to you. I just love the way that you share, Mark. You know, there's such a simplicity to it, and it's not it's such a good feeling and not intimidating in any way. So I mean, I would be in it just for that soaking up every month. Just delicious. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Dr. Mark. It's just lovely to have you here. And I guess to close up, I guess I would love for you just to share with us, you know, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? What is your form of gratitude in general and this year?
Well, we have a family tradition, so that's what we do. My wife has a brother and sister, so we all share who hosts the family. And
is it your turn?
It isn't my turn this year. We just hosted it. So, but we all bring something, and so I make a tres leches cake. It's a kind of a Mexican traditional cake. And so, and it's easy to make. So, you know, I can handle that baking, but it's really delicious and people want that. So that's become something that I bring. But I think it's just sitting in the gratitude for, and thankfulness for, you know, what I have been able to find and being blessed to have found this understanding, but also the family I have. So my son he lives, about 400 miles, no, maybe 250 miles south of me in Los Angeles, California. And he'll be coming up, and he just got engaged last month, and we really love his fiance. So they're going to stay with us. And so it's just a special time in that.
We don't celebrate it in Italy, but I think the idea of just Thanksgiving and gratitude, living that way every day, is just it's a beautiful expression of who we are and how we are when we're not lost in all that self-evaluation and thought. So I'm going to keep you in mind on that day, and I'm certainly going to share this gift with my audience, and I guess wishing you all a lovely Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for gifting us, Mark, and being here. Certainly been all my pleasure.
Well, thank you, Grace. I just loved being here and listening to you. I love the feeling you have. And as I listen to you, it allows me to find that feeling in me to be of service here in what you want to provide your audience. So that beautiful and feeling in you, it's always, for me, a pleasure to be with you. So I hope you all found this helpful, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to provide this to you.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, Grace.
Bye.